The Caretaker of Tree Palace by C. Don McCallum. Chapter 3, Soil. The boy. The stuffy classroom smelled like afternoon sweat and fruit-scented girls. All around him, pencils scribbled answers. He filled in the empty bubbles himself. Out the window, gray clouds loomed, darkening the mood of everything. The work was easy enough for him, like it always had been at his old school. The teacher and counselors never knew exactly what to do with him there either, so they just let him draw. He had many more notebooks filled with sketches than with schoolwork. Finished with his assignment, he pulled his notebook out of his binder and opened to a clean page. He drew the sunlight that had shone gentle rays through the trees on the day his mother died. He turned a page and sketched the silent bird, forever quieted by its fall. He drew his mother's shoes again, the way they danced before they shivered into stillness. As others finished their work, eyes fell upon him. He could feel them. He could hear their silent taunts, the same taunts they would shout later in front of the school. "Hey, new guy, freak, why don't you put that notebook down and say something?" His pulse raced and sweat pooled at the nape of his neck. Could they hear what he thought? Could they tell the only thing he wanted to do was go back home? And not to his grandma's house either, but to his real home, with his mom. A large presence loomed behind him, and he stopped breathing altogether. "What's this?" Mrs. Gardner gazed over his shoulder. She had sneaked up behind him as she paced the room. "None of your business," Doodles thought. His whole body shrunk under her and everyone else's attention. "John, these are beautiful," she squealed softly. "Is that notebook full of pictures like these?" She paused to examine more closely. "Are you enrolled in art? I'm sure Miss Stapleton would love to see these. They're marvelous." Will she ever stop talking? He shifted in his seat, shielding his notebook with his arm. More eyes cast their glances toward him now and burned into his skin. His heart pounded. He remained silent and stared at the intersecting lines on the floor. His teacher pulled his notebook from beneath the arm. "What a moron," someone whispered. He heard it as clear as day. A couple kids sniggered. Mrs. Gardner didn't say anything, though. She was too wrapped up in nosing through his notebook. Sweat formed on his back now. "They're good, John. Really good. I don't understand why you keep them hidden, you little Rembrandt, you." She pinched at his shoulder with a last comment. He wished he would have shattered under her touch, crashed down into a billion unseeable pieces. A few kids giggled and whispered back and forth. "Little Rembrandt," someone said. "What a freak." "All right, let's get back to work," she said in her stern voice as she handed back his binder and walked towards the vicinity of the culprits. Why can't people mind their own business? He shut his notebook the doorway into who he really was to the world where he preferred to live. More eyes fell upon him, and that was the last thing he wanted. Right after the walls caved in and revealed a sky shrouded in darkness. Actually, that sounded pretty good, once he thought about it. He could slip away beyond the broken walls. The teacher continued her stroll and turned to smile at him one more time before finally walking back to her desk and sitting. The chatter around him seemed louder. His haven from this place, his notebook, was violated. Now he knew the truth. Spies might be lurking, and he couldn't stand the thought. The more he tried to hide, the more he felt on display. Holding his pencil with no place to draw, he looked at the chipped yellow paint on the slim wooden spear between his fingers. He wished it could talk for him. He wished for pads and pads of paper in a people-less place where he could draw in peace forever. He wished he had an eraser big enough and strong enough to make himself and everything around him disappear. The birds. That afternoon, soft drops dripped from the branches above. These rains were soft and short-lived, not like the ones to come. Loud thunderstorms and heavy winds visited every year, sometimes tornadoes too. Gentle had heard Old Crow speak of the swirling destroyers. Tall, fast-traveling tree terrors sent down from the meeting of angry clouds. Old Crow had told all the animals. The tremor in her voice still haunted Gentle, for the wise and powerful black bird feared few things in this world. Growing weary of the remembrance, Gentle cooed to her mate. She must not dwell on such things. "Who-do-do, dear, come this way," she called. From a nearby electrical wire, Winsome flew to her side, then traded places with her in the nest. Tiny eggs, warmed by her body, rested among the twigs. Mysterious forces worked within the shells, readying her babies for this world of trees, sky, and toiling. As Gentle prepared to fly to a place where she could rest her ever-watchful care, a silent creature moved towards their abode. Gentle saw it from the limb above the nest. Her heart stopped for an instant. The animal moved on its hind legs, no wings in sight. "This creature is like Seed One," she whispered to her beloved. "But it is not seeds it carries." It was Boy. She had heard about boys, from sparrow and cardinal both. All birds knew of boys. Words echoed in her ears. "They're as fierce as bobcats and as sneaky too." Blue Jay told her once of boys. "Maybe Seed One is trustworthy and generous with her fare, but watch the hands of boys. Watch and be wary. They throw stones." She trembled at the thought, and she watched. Boy took a place on the cedar sprigs made soft by the rain. He crossed his legs under him and set something upon his lap. His heart seemed heavy like the dark storm clouds. Sheltering his hands from the rain with his body, Boy's gaze rose toward Winsome and the nest. His hands moved what looked like a twig over the object in his lap. Gentle's head turned in curiosity at the strange scratching sound. This is not a nest he builds with that twig, yet build he does. Winsome turned and met the eyes of his beloved. Neither she nor Winsome sang an alert to each other or to others in the woods. No warnings were uttered. No cries of fear or danger. She and her love watched Boy with the same softness as he gazed at them. They looked upon him, full of wonder. His kind, dark eyes meant no harm. He only marveled at their life on the limbs. His hand moved, but not in dangerous ways that jump up and snatch like snakes or that flip hurling rocks. The rain dropped down on the woods and all within, and a breeze of tenderness swept through the trees' leaves, making she, her mourning dove love, and Boy shiver. As Gentle grew into a mild comfort of having Boy there, she noticed something familiar and much longed for at his side. A small parcel of seed rested near his leg, just like seed one used to carry to the board and lay out for all the birds and other animals. For a few moments more, Boy was busy. Then, as quickly and quietly as he had arrived, he stood and poured a small feast upon the board where Seed One used to keep the animals so generously fed for many seasons. Gentle hopped back down to the nest to see her Winsome's eyes. He hopped to the nest edge. Neither knew fully what to make of Boy. Blue Jay, her one and only, sang, told us there would be cruelty at his hands, but I saw no indication of anything of the sort. Yes, if Boy were a tree, we could nest in him. Gentle gazed at her eggs that would soon hatch and carefully moved over them. Blue Jay is in love with his own song again. Yes. Winsome prepared to partake of the seed spread on the board. Soon, the time of the little ones would mean constant searches for enough food. By the looks of his eyes and of his hands, I would say that his name could also be Gentle, like yours, my dear one. Just then, one of the eggs trembled with life, ready to break open and free a brand new baby bird into the world of trees and flying. The sudden shakes of the egg were the first sign of the life emerging. "Ah, see how it shimmies," Winsome sang. "This little one shall be strong in flight." The tapping beak within made a hairline crack in the shell. Winsome jumped onto the breeze, delighted. "Be free, sweetest," Gentle cooed. Her wings filled with excitement, but she stayed close and ready to receive her young. She said her words slowly and loudly to the one within the egg. "Loved ones await to care for you just beyond your shell. We long for your presence." Tap, tap, tap. The egg shook and broke open. "How we long to watch you grow, to nurture you to flight." Winsome called to the one breaking free. Gentle gazed upon the baby bird for the first time, enchanted. "Who-do-do? Draw near," she cooed. "Draw near." Dripping with new life, the tiny dove shivered its way out of the fragile shell. Scree, scree, the baby bird cried, shaking in fear. Where am I? Scree, scree. You are free, Gentle sang sweetly. Your father and I are here to guide you to flight, to bring you morsels that will help you grow strong. Gentle swept her wing, indicating the trees and sky. All the world is here for your training. Winsome flew to the festal board, the first of many journeys for food. Gentle stayed near to comfort the new bird. Welcome, tiny dove. Welcome to the world of light, of flight and toiling. Scree, scree, he answered, his body coming closer to Gentle. What is this pain in my belly? It is hunger, my young. Worry not. It shall carry you to flight one day. But for now, see how your father flies to you. Winsome returned, filling the baby's beak for the first time. As he fed the new dove, Gentle danced upon the wind, beginning again the journey of life. She couldn't wait to get back to her nest to be with her growing family. The boy. After school, Doodles couldn't stand being inside, even though the gray sky grumbled. The kids teasing wouldn't leave his head or his heart, so he went to Tree Palace seeking its peace. Curling his legs up under him, the boy set his notebook in his lap under a tree in the great hall. The opening in the woods was large enough to house a banquet for a king and all of his knights. In the middle, he imagined an enormous banquet table, long and covered with meat from the hunt and fruit from the palace's nearby orchard. His pencil traced the image onto the page as he tried to find the palace his mother had seen in the scrawny woods. A torch high on a stone wall formed in his mind, and he drew it. Before long, the whole scene unfolded in black on his white paper. The drawing seemed to deepen, then move. He could almost hear the comrades' voices calling to each other, laughing together. Then the breeze rolling around his side and through his hair pulled him out of his reverie and back to the place where he sat alone under the sheltering tree. Was that it? Was that Tree Palace? The wind whispered something to the woods in a language the boy tried hard to understand. He listened for an echo of some meaning. He listened for his mother's voice, her laugh. In the near quiet, he listened hard. He'd been listening for sounds of her for weeks now, but only heard her silence. Silence and the way the world felt cold without her. His heart ached with need of her kiss. Had the very molecules in the air changed since she died? It seemed heavy and troubled. The gentle breeze vibrated sadness and held no warmth. He shivered. He knew her distance, yet somehow she seemed near. Deep inside his heart, he sensed her standing just out of his view. Sometimes he almost felt her behind him, covering him like the branches of a tree does. If he turned fast enough, perhaps he'd see her. The warmth of her, the way she looked at him with the love of a mother, spread itself all around him. It entered his blood and kept his heart pumping. Tree Palace, she called this place. He tried to see it. He tried to understand and know what she meant. He felt her strongest there in the woods. Turning, he looked over his shoulder, hoping to see her eyes, her smile, but all he saw was the trees, the scraggly little cedars. Somehow, she always managed to remain out of view. In one of the trees behind him, a small movement caught his attention. A bird sat protecting its nest. The weeping coo told him it was a mourning dove. Who-do-do, who-do-do. Turning back to his notebook, he flipped the page and let the tip of his pencil rest. Its stillness scared him for a moment, then his hand found the strength to pull it across the blankness. Spirals and lines formed nothing but chaos and growing darkness. Not liking what he drew, he stopped his pencil and listened for the king's voice again. He tried to see the knights, but they were gone. Even the wind was still. The only sounds he heard were the occasional car passing on the nearby road, the quiet coo of the dove, and his own breath. The boy lifted his legs and spun gingerly to face the two birds, one nested and one perching nearby. His pencil followed the soft line of the mourning dove's head peeking out of the nest. The bird's head spun its gaze in sharp turns, the way lizards do. He couldn't tell if it looked at him, but he figured it did. Under his pencil, the sleek line of a dove's neck and head took shape. He tried to capture the gentleness of the birds, the devotion that seemed to flow between them. Their tiny bodies stood together as a stronghold in protection of the nest and all that lay within it. Remembering the seed bag at his side, he rose and walked to the board where his grandmother asked him to pour food for the animals. Doodles took the sweet coo of the morning doves as a song of thanks for the seed. The song made his heart feel lighter somehow. Then the cooing became louder, as if to warn off something or someone. Doodles looked right and left for a possible predator stalking near or some sign of danger to the doves. His heart raced for fear that they'd be hurt. Taking his place again on the ground, he watched for anything that may try to harm the birds. Scanning the woods, he wouldn't let harm come. Then he heard it. Scree, scree. It wasn't like last time in the forest with his mother. It wasn't the same fear he remembered in that bird's song. Scree, scree. The morning doves busied themselves around the nest. One flew to the just laid seed and ate from it. Scree, scree. He could see it now, the tiny head moving in fright of the newly entered world. The baby bird sang its first song of wonder, of awe and confusion, of wanting its mother and father to be near. One of the doves flew to the board, tapping at the seed with its beak. Scree, scree. Doodles' insides felt like cool water running, soothing him. He remembered what joy and excitement felt like. He stood to get a better look. As the one dove flew back to the nest, the other flew to the seed. "Don't worry, little dove," he said aloud, the first words he'd uttered on his own since. It was as if a stranger had entered the woods, sneaked up, and startled him. But it was just his own voice. He tried more words to see if they might feel any more familiar. "I won't hurt you." His throat clenched and his tongue thickened. He didn't want to talk, feeling unworthy of so great a thing as speech. The birds sang, and the little ones screeched what might have been a response, but like the sounds of silence, of the wind, of everything in the world that wasn't just black and white, he didn't understand the meaning of it. "I won't hurt you," he said again, this time to no one and nothing in particular. He just wanted to hear proof that he still lived. He wanted to feel the wind of his own breath still blowing. Doodles stood for another moment, then sketched. He stayed with the family of doves until all light left the sky. Thank you for listening to The Caretaker of Tree Palace by C. Don McCallum. If you're enjoying this story, please consider sharing it with someone you know. And please like the video and subscribe to this channel to help others discover these stories.